Watch this shocking testimony of a former Muslim who died for 15 minutes and saw Muhammad in hell. What he discovered will change everything you thought you knew about Islam. I live in Adelaide, South Australia, in a quiet suburb with well-kept gardens and friendly neighbors. At 57, I thought I had life figured out. My name is Zachariah Rahman, and I used to be a devoted Muslim. Every day I would wake up for Fajr prayer, spread my prayer mat facing Mecca, and perform my daily rituals with unwavering dedication. My journey in Islam started from birth. Born to Pakistani parents who immigrated to Australia in the 1980s, I was raised to believe that Islam was the perfect religion. I memorized large portions of the Quran, led prayers at our local mosque, and even made the pilgrimage to Mecca twice. I took pride in teaching my 3 children about Islam and ensuring they followed the straight path. My life changed forever during what started as a regular camping trip to the Flinders Ranges. I was an experienced camper and had been visiting these ancient mountains for years. This time, I went alone, seeking spiritual connection through solitude. The weather forecast showed clear skies, but Mother Nature had other plans. On my second night, while setting up camp near a creek bed, I noticed some unusual rock formations. Being an amateur geologist, I decided to investigate. The rocks appeared to have strange markings that I'd never seen before. As I moved closer to examine them, I didn't notice the brown snake coiled beneath a nearby shrub. In retrospect, approaching unknown areas in failing light was foolish. The snake, a highly venomous eastern brown, struck without warning. The bite was quick, just a nick on my ankle. At first, I thought it was just a scratch from a thorny bush, but within minutes, my vision began to blur and my heart started racing. I reached for my satellite phone, but my hands were trembling so badly that I dropped it. It bounced off a rock and fell into the creek. Panic set in as I realized I was alone, 3 kilometers from the main camping ground, with no way to call for help. The venom worked fast. My breathing became labored and my legs gave out. I collapsed onto the rocky ground, my head spinning. The last thing I remember was looking up at the stars, which seemed to be dancing in the darkening sky. I tried reciting the Shahada, the Islamic declaration of faith, but the words wouldn't come. The medical report later showed that my heart had stopped for 15 minutes before the emergency response team found me. A group of hikers had spotted my abandoned campsite and alerted the authorities. The park rangers found me just in time, but those 15 minutes would forever change my understanding of reality and truth. Before that night, I was certain that Islam was the true path. I had spent countless hours defending my faith, arguing with Christians about the divinity of Jesus, and dismissing what I saw as their misguided beliefs. I was convinced that Muhammad was Allah's final messenger, and that the Quran was the perfect, unchanged word of God. Looking back now, I see how deeply indoctrinated I was. The religious certainty I carried was like a comfortable blanket that shielded me from questioning anything. Every doubt was pushed aside with rehearsed apologetics. Every criticism of Islam was deflected with well-practiced responses. I had answers for everything, or so I thought. Little did I know that death was waiting to strip away all these illusions. What I experienced in those 15 minutes would shatter everything I believed about Islam, Muhammad, and the nature of truth itself. The reality I encountered was far different from anything I had been taught in my 57 years as a Muslim. The moment my heart stopped, everything changed. It wasn't like falling asleep or passing out. It was instant and crystal clear. I found myself standing in what seemed like an enormous courtroom, but it stretched infinitely in all directions. The air itself glowed with a light that came from nowhere and everywhere at once. Before me stood beings of light, angels, but not the way Islam had described them. They weren't the winged creatures I'd imagined from Islamic teachings. These beings radiated pure truth, and in their presence, every lie I'd ever believed began to unravel. One of them approached me. Without words, I understood that my life was being reviewed. Scenes from my past played out before us, but I wasn't just watching them. I was reliving every moment, feeling not only my emotions, but also the effects my actions had on others. I saw myself teaching Islamic doctrine to my children, and for the first time, I felt the weight of every falsehood I'd passed on. Each time I'd told them Muhammad was God's perfect messenger, I felt a deep spiritual pain. The truth was being revealed, and it was unbearable. Then everything shifted, and I found myself being led down what seemed like a corridor of time. The angel beside me explained that I needed to see something crucial. We moved through what felt like layers of reality until we reached a vast, dark space. The darkness here was different. It was alive with suffering. As my eyes adjusted, I saw countless souls trapped in their own decisions, bound by the lies they had chosen to believe and spread. But one figure stood out among them all, and the sight of him shook me to my core. There, writhing in his own special torment, was Muhammad. The man I had revered and defended my entire life was nothing like the historical accounts. He wasn't the noble prophet Islam had portrayed. Instead, I saw him for what he truly was, a deceiver who had led millions astray. Muhammad's appearance shocked me. Gone was the dignified figure from Islamic tradition. Instead, I saw a man consumed by the weight of his own deceptions. He wasn't being tortured by external forces. His punishment came from within, from the full knowledge of how many souls he had led away from truth. He looked at me, and in that moment, I understood everything. Every contradiction in the Quran, every convenient revelation that had served his personal desires, every violent command that had led to centuries of bloodshed, it all became painfully clear. The perfect human being Muslims aspired to emulate was experiencing the consequences of his own deceptions. "Tell them," he said, his voice thick with regret. "Tell them I was wrong. Tell them I knew the truth but chose power instead. Tell them about Jesus, the one I denied." The scene shifted again, and I was shown visions of how Muhammad had deliberately twisted the truth he had learned about Jesus from the Christians and Jews of his time. I saw him crafting the Quran, not through divine revelation as Muslims believe, but through a calculated effort to create a religion that would grant him power and control. I witnessed moments from his life that Islamic tradition had sanitized or hidden. The real Muhammad was a man driven by worldly desires, who used claims of divine revelation to justify his actions. Each revelation conveniently aligned with his personal wishes, whether it was taking more wives, attacking caravans, or eliminating opposition. The angel showing me these things explained that Muhammad had been given multiple chances to turn to the truth, but he had repeatedly chosen to build his own empire instead. Each choice had led him deeper into deception, until the lies became his reality. I saw how the spread of Islam had hindered countless souls from finding the true path. The angel showed me millions of people, generation after generation, being led away from salvation because they trusted in Muhammad's teachings. The weight of this truth was overwhelming. Then I was shown something even more disturbing: how Islamic teachings about Jesus had been deliberately crafted to prevent Muslims from accepting the truth about him. I saw how Muhammad had taken the stories of Jesus he had heard and twisted them, creating a false Jesus that wouldn't threaten his own claim to prophethood. The revelations continued as the angel showed me Islamic heaven, the Jannah I had longed for all my life. But now I saw it for what it was: a man-made fantasy designed to appeal to basic human desires. The promise of unlimited physical pleasures, multiple wives, and endless indulgence was nothing like the true spiritual reality of heaven. I was shown how this false paradise had been crafted specifically to attract followers, particularly men, by promising them everything they couldn't have in their earthly lives. It was a clever deception that had worked for centuries, keeping millions enslaved to a false hope. Then came the most painful revelation. I saw how the 5 pillars of Islam, which I had faithfully practiced my entire life, were actually keeping people from true salvation. Each pillar, while appearing righteous, was designed to keep followers trapped in a system of works-based salvation that could never save their souls. The Shahada, which I had proclaimed thousands of times, was shown to me as a direct denial of Jesus' true nature. Every time Muslims declare that there is no God but Allah, they're unknowingly rejecting the divine nature of Christ. The angel showed me how this simple declaration had become a spiritual barrier for millions. I saw the true purpose of the 5 daily prayers, not as genuine communion with God, but as a ritual that gave followers a false sense of righteousness. The strict rules about washing, timing, and positioning were revealed as distractions from genuine spiritual connection. The zakat, which I had always seen as pure charity, was shown to be another form of self-righteousness. While helping the poor is noble, the Islamic system had turned it into a mathematical formula for earning divine favor, something I now understood was impossible. Fasting during Ramadan, which I had practiced faithfully for decades, was revealed as another way of earning false merit. The angel showed me how Muslims worldwide were placing their trust in these acts of self-denial rather than in true salvation. The Hajj, which I had completed twice and considered the highlight of my spiritual life, was exposed as a continuation of pre-Islamic pagan rituals, repackaged with Islamic terminology. The circling of the Kaaba, the throwing of stones, the running between hills, all of it was built on ancient Arabian customs, not divine commands. As my journey continued, I was taken to witness scenes that shattered every remaining doubt about Islam. The angel showed me how the Quran, which Muslims believe is perfectly preserved, had actually undergone significant changes throughout history. I saw early Muslims struggling with different versions of the Quran before Uthman ordered all but one version to be burned. The perfect preservation I had defended so passionately was a myth. The variations in early Quranic manuscripts were shown to me, and I witnessed the political decisions that determined which version would become official. The angel then revealed something that struck me deeply: the true nature of Allah as depicted in Islam. I saw how this conception of God had been crafted to be deliberately different from the true God. The Islamic Allah was shown to be a compilation of pre-Islamic Arabic tribal concepts mixed with distorted elements of Judaism and Christianity. I was shown how Muhammad had taken the name Allah from the pre-Islamic pagan Arabs who already used it as the name of their supreme deity. The angel revealed how he had then reshaped this deity's character to serve his purposes, creating a God who conveniently supported his every decision and desire. The more I saw, the more I understood how masterfully the deception had been crafted. Islamic teachings about predestination, for example, were shown to be a tool for controlling believers. By convincing people that everything, even their faith or lack thereof, was predetermined by Allah, the system removed personal responsibility and critical thinking. Then came a series of revelations about Islamic eschatology, the teachings about the end times. I saw how these prophecies were deliberately designed to prevent Muslims from recognizing the truth when they encountered it. The Islamic Antichrist figure, Dajjal, was cleverly described with attributes that would make Muslims reject true spiritual enlightenment. The angel showed me scenes from the spread of Islam through history. The image of peaceful expansion I had been taught was replaced with the reality of violent conquest. I saw how the doctrine of jihad had been used to justify imperial expansion, and how the promise of paradise for martyrs had been used to motivate warriors. Most disturbing was seeing how the treatment of women in Islam had nothing to do with divine command and everything to do with 7th century Arabian cultural practices. The angel showed me how Muhammad had actually reduced women's existing rights in many cases, rather than improving them as I had always believed. I witnessed the real stories behind Muhammad's marriages, particularly to Aisha. The apologetics I had used to defend these marriages crumbled as I saw the truth. These weren't divine arrangements, but rather unions that served Muhammad's personal desires and political ambitions. The concept of taqiyya, permissible lying to protect or advance Islam, was revealed as part of a larger system of deception. I saw how this doctrine had been used throughout history to deceive non-Muslims and protect Islamic interests, all while claiming moral superiority. As these truths continued to unfold, I was shown something that deeply troubled me: the real reason why Islam maintains such a strong hold on its followers: fear. Not just the obvious fear of hellfire or punishment, but a complex web of social, psychological, and spiritual fears that keep people trapped. I saw how the apostasy laws in Islam weren't divine commands, but clever mechanisms to prevent people from leaving once they discovered the truth. The death penalty for leaving Islam was Muhammad's way of ensuring his followers remained loyal, even if they began to doubt. The angel revealed how Islamic teaching deliberately creates a fear of questioning. Every doubt is attributed to Shaitan, Satan, making Muslims afraid to even examine their own beliefs critically. This psychological prison was more effective than any physical constraint. I was shown how the concept of family honor in Islamic societies serves as another chain. Many Muslims who discover the truth about Islam stay silent to protect their families from shame and social ostracism. The system is designed to make the cost of leaving too high. Then came a revealing look at how Islamic education systems perpetuate these deceptions. Young children are taught to memorize the Quran before they can understand it, creating an emotional attachment to the religion before critical thinking skills develop. The angel showed me how this early indoctrination creates deep neural pathways that make it extremely difficult to question the faith later in life. The true nature of Islamic worship was revealed to me. The ritual prayers, which I had performed faithfully 5 times a day, were shown to be more about submission to a system than genuine connection with God. The precise movements, the Arabic recitations that many don't even understand, all of it designed to create a sense of religious accomplishment while preventing real spiritual growth. I saw how the Islamic concept of ummah, community, functions as both a support system and a prison. The strong emphasis on community solidarity makes individuals afraid to think independently, knowing they risk losing their entire social network if they question or leave the faith. Most disturbing was seeing how Islamic teachings about Jews and Christians had been deliberately twisted to prevent Muslims from seriously considering other faiths. The Quran and Hadith's contradictory messages about people of the book were cleverly designed to create just enough respect to claim tolerance, while maintaining a sense of superiority that prevents genuine interfaith dialogue. The angel showed me how Islamic apologetics had evolved over time, always adapting to counter whatever criticism arose. I saw modern Islamic scholars creating elaborate explanations for scientific errors in the Quran, reinterpreting problematic verses, and developing complex theological arguments to maintain the illusion of divine perfection. Finally, I was shown the devastating impact of Islamic teaching on critical thinking. The constant emphasis on submission and acceptance, the discouragement of questioning, and the fusion of religious identity with personal identity create minds that become resistant to truth, even when directly confronted with it. As these truths continued to unfold, I was shown something that deeply troubled me: the real reason why Islam maintains such a strong hold on its followers. Fear. Not just the obvious fear of hellfire or punishment, but a complex web of social, psychological, and spiritual fears that keep people trapped. I saw how the apostasy laws in Islam weren't divine commands, but clever mechanisms to prevent people from leaving once they discovered the truth. The death penalty for leaving Islam was Muhammad's way of ensuring his followers remained loyal, even if they began to doubt. The angel revealed how Islamic teaching deliberately creates a fear of questioning. Every doubt is attributed to Shaitan, Satan, making Muslims afraid to even examine their own beliefs critically. This psychological prison was more effective than any physical constraint. I was shown how the concept of family honor in Islamic societies serves as another chain. Many Muslims who discover the truth about Islam stay silent to protect their families from shame and social ostracism. The system is designed to make the cost of leaving too high. Then came a revealing look at how Islamic education systems perpetuate these deceptions. Young children are taught to memorize the Quran before they can understand it, creating an emotional attachment to the religion before critical thinking skills develop. The angel showed me how this early indoctrination creates deep neural pathways that make it extremely difficult to question the faith later in life. The true nature of Islamic worship was revealed to me. The ritual prayers, which I had performed faithfully 5 times a day, were shown to be more about submission to a system than genuine connection with God. The precise movements, the Arabic recitations that many don't even understand, all of it designed to create a sense of religious accomplishment while preventing real spiritual growth. I saw how the Islamic concept of ummah, community, functions as both a support system and a prison. The strong emphasis on community solidarity makes individuals afraid to think independently, knowing they risk losing their entire social network if they question or leave the faith. Most disturbing was seeing how Islamic teachings about Jews and Christians had been deliberately twisted to prevent Muslims from seriously considering other faiths. The Quran and Hadith's contradictory messages about people of the book were cleverly designed to create just enough respect to claim tolerance, while maintaining a sense of superiority that prevents genuine interfaith dialogue. The angel showed me how Islamic apologetics had evolved over time, always adapting to counter whatever criticism arose. I saw modern Islamic scholars creating elaborate explanations for scientific errors in the Quran, reinterpreting problematic verses, and developing complex theological arguments to maintain the illusion of divine perfection. Finally, I was shown the devastating impact of Islamic teaching on critical thinking. The constant emphasis on submission and acceptance, the discouragement of questioning, and the fusion of religious identity with personal identity create minds that become resistant to truth, even when directly confronted with it. Coming back to life was like being born again. The emergency team later told me they had worked on me for nearly an hour before stabilizing my condition. But I wasn't the same person they had found unconscious in the Flinders Ranges. The first few weeks after my experience were the hardest. How do you continue living normally when everything you believed has been shown to be false? I couldn't pray towards Mecca anymore. Each attempt would bring back visions of what I'd seen. My prayer rug lay rolled up in the corner, collecting dust. My family noticed the change immediately. I stopped attending Friday prayers at the mosque. I couldn't bear to hear the imam's sermons, knowing the truth about what he was teaching. My wife, Amira, was deeply concerned. She thought the snake venom had affected my brain. The hardest part was watching my children continue their Islamic studies. Every time they recited Quran verses or spoke about Muhammad, my heart ached. I knew I had to tell them the truth, but I needed time to figure out how. Initially, I told no one about what I'd seen. Who would believe me? In the Muslim community, claiming to have seen Muhammad in hell would be considered blasphemy. I could lose everything: my family, my friends, my business connections. The social cost of speaking out seemed too high, but the truth burned inside me like a fire. Every night, I would wake up remembering the anguished face of Muhammad, his words echoing in my mind, "Tell them I was wrong." The weight of this responsibility became unbearable. 3 months after my near-death experience, I finally gathered my family in our living room. For 4 hours, I shared everything I had seen. Amira cried. My oldest son stormed out. My daughter sat in stunned silence. Only my youngest son, 12-year-old Yusuf, asked questions with genuine curiosity. The aftermath was exactly what I had feared. Word spread through the community like wildfire. Former friends crossed the street to avoid me. Business partners canceled contracts. My brother stopped speaking to me. The imam visited our house twice, trying to help me return to the straight path. But something unexpected happened too. People began contacting me secretly, other Muslims who had doubts, who had seen inconsistencies in Islamic teaching but were afraid to speak out. My experience gave them courage to question, to seek truth. Today, 2 years later, I live a different life. Amira and I have found a new spiritual home in a local Orthodox church. Yusuf comes with us. My older children are still Muslim, but they're asking questions they never dared to ask before. Seeds of truth have been planted. I've started a support group for former Muslims, helping them deal with the social and emotional challenges of leaving Islam. Every week, I hear stories of others who have discovered the truth. Some through intellectual study, others through supernatural experiences like mine. The cost has been high, but the freedom is worth it. I no longer fear death. I no longer perform rituals to earn divine favor. I've found something real, something that all the Islamic prayers and practices were counterfeit copies of. Sometimes late at night, I remember that moment when I saw Muhammad in hell, and I weep for the billions still deceived by his teachings. But I also have hope. The truth is stronger than any deception, and it's setting people free, one heart at a time. Watch this powerful testimony. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and ring the bell for more incredible stories of truth and transformation. Your support helps us reach more people with these life-changing messages.